All right, my name is Rotimi Olawale. Many things. Um, Primarily, I'm the Executive Director of Youth of Africa. That's my day-to-day job. But largely, I'm a youth development professional. I've been engaged in youth development work for the past 12 to 14 years. I most recently taken interest in film and documentary making, and I also have been studying public policy in Nigeria and across the continent for a couple of years. I see Youth Hub as a social enterprise experiment. We have a big leaning on youth development, and we try to do that on many fronts. One, we have a web platform that provides opportunities for young people across the continent, which is our flagship project, and which is has become one of the largest of such platforms across the continent, and in fact the most consistent. We've been running that platform for 6 years, providing opportunities for young people in Africa. And aside that, we're also involved in analyzing and understanding youth development and youth policies in Nigeria and across the continent, and providing this insight to partners and different stakeholders and also young people. We are also been supporting different partners to create platforms that enables them to engage with young people in Nigeria and across the continent. And we're also actively involved in doing advocacy work, especially around policy change, legislative advocacy, and ensuring that the voices of young people count. I think that our engagement with DigiTrends has been quite exciting on many fronts. And one of the things I always credit DigiTrends for is that it's a space that allows for ideas. If I recall the first DigiTrends I attended in Dakar, there was a small cohort of young people that gathered at that meeting, and it was vibrant discussions for a couple of days. And there were ideas that emerged, and one of those ideas was that the Africa governance architecture should take an institutional approach to its engagement with youth. At that point, I think it was just, well, we invite young people, consult them, and get one or two of them to speak at the high level, and that's it. And then, but at the end of that initial consultation, there was an emerging response that we want you guys not to see youth as a tokenism, or if one of you speaks at the opening ceremony, yes, they have that platform, that's it. There was an emerging response that says, look, take an institutional view to this. In fact, those who at that point were proposing the idea of an institutional mechanism to youth engagement didn't propose how that engagement should be. They just felt we want it to be institutionalized. And the Secretariat ran with that and began to develop the Youth Engagement Strategy, which has seen this process become, as far as I'm concerned, a success story in how to engage with young people on the continent. So AGA has engaged young people in saying, tell us your ideas. We would partner with you to bring them to fruition. We have a space where we can also allow you to test your ideas. We've seen various spin-off initiatives as part of DigiTrends. One of it is Africa Talks, where you find stories of young people take on stage and share their experience, their ideas, and inspire other people. So for me, I have seen that the DigiTrends platform has allowed many young people across the continent to network, to learn from each other, to grow, to experiment, and to build this ongoing community of young people who are actively engaged in democracy and governance on the continent. I think that many people get youth participation extremely wrong. You want to have a program, a project, they invite one or two young people to the room, they give them a few minutes to talk. As far as they're concerned, young people have been engaged. So yeah, you have such models across the continent, and it doesn't work. You know, I recall a couple of years back, the Digitrends pioneered with asking youth organizations across the continent to run national consultations, you know, and they did not provide any resources to these organizations across the continent, but the organization saw it as an opportunity. It was, at that time, to the best of my knowledge, the first time that the African Union is asking young people, trusting young people to run consultations for them. So the young people who ran with it, we had consultations, if I remember, in more than a dozen countries where people engaged, had physical meetings, had online conversations to say, let's talk about these issues around democracy and governance in our countries, and let's come up with a position. And these then synthesized into the entire process for the high-level meetings for that year. So youth participation, in my own opinion, in the last 3 to 4 years in Africa has witnessed growth. Of course, some of it fueled by uprising in many parts of Africa, some of it fueled by social media, where young people have always had a voice, but now social media provides a platform for them to have their voices amplified. You know, so it enables more voices to be heard and for young people to be able to speak out. There have also been some challenges. A lot of people feel that social media is the end in itself. So if I have an issue, I go to social media, I have 10 tweets, yes, I'm an activist, you know. I can talk against my government, I can abuse my president, I can say anything I like, that's activism. I have been involved in a couple of campaigns. One is the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, where I was spokesperson for 1 year. I knew that, look, running a successful hashtag, you have to match it with physical on-the-ground activism. If not, you have instant fame. Your hashtag would trend, and in 4 to 6 hours, people would have forgotten. You know, I tell people that the success of Bring Back Our Girls is the fact that every day till today, for more than 3 years, people meet physically in Abuja to discuss these issues, to advocate for these issues. So if you take out that physical meeting, the social media activism is going to die. It's also the same thing we've seen with the Not Too Young to Run campaign, which is largely focused on constitutional amendment and it's largely legislative advocacy. The hashtag is popular. Everybody wants to be associated with saying, I've tweeted something about the Not Too Young to Run campaign. But the reality is that if there are no physical activities, if there are no lobbies, if there was no protest, a month ago, Not Too Young to Run was going to die in Nigeria. You know, we heard the news. AGA called for an emergency meeting of the groups involved as part of the stakeholders team, and we said, look, we have to issue a press statement, call for a press conference, and hit the street. And we hit the street. Over 2,000 people hit the street, went to the National Assembly, and a massive protest. And we insisted we're not going to leave until we have members of the National Assembly address that group. If we had remained on social media, change is not going to happen. So youth participation should be that young people use the tools and the means that they have to amplify their voices, but they should also remember that they have to match that with their commitment. It's also the same thing with the Fees Must Fall protest that happened in South Africa. If it's just an hashtag and boys and girls in school did not go on the streets, they would not have attracted the attention that they've gotten, and they would not have been able to deliver any results. I think that Africa has largely been seen as a continent of big opportunities. And we have also been a continent that does more talk than action. And we need to change that. We've done more talk than action, and we need to change that. I recall the other day I was flying back home from Lusaka to go from Lusaka to Abuja. I flew Lusaka, I stopped over in Harare. I slept the night in Addis to get to Abuja. It took me 24 hours. If I was going to fly from, I think the distance between Nigeria and Zambia is up to 4,000 miles, maybe 2,500 miles. If I was going to fly from Abuja to New York, it took me, I think, about 16 hours plus transit. You see, so the problem is that, and we know the problem, there's been several resolutions around that. We need to open up African skies and X, Y, Z. But for the political commitment to take these decisions and push them into real action, we have not seen. Somehow African leaders have dragged their foot. The Africa we want is that Africans already have the resources to solve the problems on this continent. We just need that strong resolve. Recently, the African Union also took a decision on an African passport. But I mean, that has also foot dragged, but we've seen some countries take the leap of faith to say, you know what, all Africans are welcome in our country, visas on arrival. I wish many more African countries can jump on this. It will enable that we unlock resources, unlock opportunities for trade. 14% of trade is done in intra-Africa. We sell more than 80% to the rest of the world. We need to do more trade within us as African continent. Why should other Africans buy their oil from outside the continent when they can buy from oil-producing countries in Africa? Why should Nigeria buy its grains from other countries when Ethiopia produces grains? You know, so we need to foster such partnership to deliberately ensure that African countries grow, and we've seen it in the past. We've seen the independence movement in Africa where Nkrumah, Nyerere, and all of the forefathers of Africa declared that although we have gotten independence, but we cannot say that we are free until all other African countries are free. And we saw also the fight to break South Africa from the thresholds of apartheid. It was largely fueled and led by African countries who not only spoke, but put their money where their voice is. You know, countries like Nigeria supported the anti-apartheid movement with cash. In fact, my parents would tell me that their salaries were deducted at some point to fund that venture. You'd see countries like Ethiopia even host some anti-apartheid people in Ethiopia to offer training and all of that. You know, so African leaders at that time, they had a vision, but they were also very committed into seeing this vision a reality. The Africa we want is one that African both leaders and followers have visions, but are also able to push this with the political will to take this forward.